Good evening, everybody. Monday Morning Quarterback, episode 87. And I apologize, I'm scrambling. I'm a couple minutes late. I like to be punctual. We had our final city council meeting for approval on our building project. and so I had to get through that, and left me scrambling. We just finished that a little bit ago. So glad you could join us tonight. We're trying the new Facebook live, which I did a little test. Another reason I was running late, and it keeps wanting to default to go live on your personal page, but I finally figured it out, and it appears to be working. So bear with me as we attempt to do this. I think I can see all your questions. I see Jason saying hi to Trevor. We all miss T-Bone. T-Bone's home in Texas. As we're still not allowed to officially open as an essential business, I'm allowed to be here. So I've been here working every day and shipping what I can, and answering the phone and talking to folks and receiving some shocks that came in. And hopefully that ban is lifted soon and we get all of our guys back, including T-Bone, who everybody misses. So looks like a lot of states are starting to open up, and hopefully that is the first step towards racing again. I'm so missing it and looking forward to it. I can't believe how much I miss it, honestly. 40 years old, and this might be the longest stretch of not going to a racetrack in my whole life. So yeah, I miss it a lot. My kid has fallen in love with dirt bikes, and he's been riding his dirt bike like crazy, and the neighbor has a full outdoor motocross track, invited him over to ride tonight. I didn't get to go witness it because I was here for the city council meeting, but my wife took him over there. And so we need to get back racing soon before Hudson wants to be a dirt bike racer, and I don't build shocks for dirt bikes. We need them in that quarter midget. So Jason, thank you for the purchase. We appreciate everybody who has bought things, whether it be online or through us, during this time. I know a lot of people have been financially affected and are just being cautious with their money because of all this, and I certainly understand that. But we do greatly appreciate everybody who supported us. That's helped keep us going and ensure that we have a good place for all of our guys to come back to work once we're allowed to open up and get back racing, which I think is in the really near future. But we really do appreciate all of you guys. It's helped not only our small business, but a lot of small businesses keep going, and enough can't be said for that. So tonight we are going to talk about cavitation. What is cavitation, and why is it important in all shocks, but you can control it more so in a monotube shock with gas pressure. So in a twin tube, if your shock's cavitating, if the gas bag isn't broke, then it's 100% on your shock builder that they did not properly build the shock initially, and there's a pressure imbalance in it, and it's causing cavitation. So we have a cool little video that I will show here, and you will be able to see a shock. This is a video I took from CTW Automation, great company. We have one of their dynos here, and we work with them on all of our Rohrig dynos as well. But they did a little demonstration with a clear shock, and you can see this shock running with very low pressure or no gas pressure, and how the cavitation is occurring in the shock. And it's basically a pressure imbalance, which creates air bubbles in the shock, and then as they add pressure through a pump, you can see the shock oil clear up and the cavitation go away. So without further ado, here is that video. So right there you can see how it's cavitating, and then as they add pressure, the bubbles go away and the shock oil clears up. So what does that mean? What is cavitation exactly? Well, it's you'll get, again, that pressure imbalance in the shock, and that's where we'll get our big spread from compression open to closed and rebound open to close, and the shock doesn't perform the way it was intended, and it'll perform inconsistently, and if it's ran for a long period of time cavitating like that, it just destroys the shock oil. You can never get all the bubbles out of it, and the shock will need to be rebuilt at that point. I'm going to check here one thing to see. For some reason, I'm not seeing comments. I apologize that this new live has caused me so many issues. Hope I didn't lose y'all. All right. It looks like we're still live. Let's see what we got here. Okay, we're still live. For some reason, the new Facebook Live is just very cumbersome. The whole thing disappeared. It didn't look like we were live, but apparently we are. All right. If you guys can hear me right now, somebody wave or say hi, just so I confirm I'm not talking to myself, and then I'll continue my spiel about cavitation and what things have occurred to help improve that, and why monotube shocks are better today than they were previously. Okay, you guys can hear me. Awesome. So when gas shocks first came out, or first came to our markets, they didn't have a base valve. And I've got a couple base valve samples. That's a base valve out of our small body twin tube, base valve out of our small body monotube or gas shock. So when the gas shocks first came to market, there was no base valve. And so in order to avoid the cavitation you saw in that video, you had to run a lot of pressure in that shock, because the only resistance you had on the divider piston was the pressure you were putting in. So as the shock compressed, the force went directly to that divider piston. So if the shock saw massive velocity, you had to have enough pressure on the other end so the divider piston didn't move quicker than the main piston and then change the volume inside that shock, which would create an air pocket. So a lot of those initial gas shocks that were designed for Formula One and IndyCar, when they first came to dirt, they got a bad rap. We still have these conversations probably on a monthly basis with customers that, I don't want a gas shock, I ran one, I hated it. They probably ran one 10, 15 years ago before base valves were introduced to the market, and so they felt good when they hot lapped and the track had grip, but then when it got slick and they had 100 pounds of gas in the shock, the car sat on top of the racetrack, there was way too much spring rate there, it felt stiff, and they couldn't get the traction they wanted. Now with the base valve, basically what this is you have a base valve, there'll be a series of shims on it, just like your main piston stack, and as the main piston goes up in the shock, the fluid will flow through this before hitting that divider piston. So it's basically taken some of that force away. It's slowed down the velocity of the oil hitting that divider piston, and now you don't have to have as much pressure on the top to control it. So now when the track gets slick, we can get down 10 pounds of gas in some instances, which is essentially zero rod pressure depending on the application, shaft size and volume, etc. So now we have the benefit of when the track's hooked up and fast, we can add gas pressure, get the shock to react quick, and do what we need it to do. And then as the track slicks off, decrease that pressure and get the traction that we need in the slick. So you saw in that video that if you don't run enough pressure, what it does to the oil, and the shock's very inconsistent. So whenever we give a tuning guide with a new set of shocks, we'll kind of tell you the parameters, where you should be and how light you should get on oil. And that's very important to follow. One of the reasons that we got away from a Schrader valve in our quarter midget shocks was we just found a lot of the tuners weren't monitoring the pressure, and whatever we sent it to them with, they ran, and over time that thing leaked the pressure out, same as if you never check the air pressure in your tires. And so then the shocks were cavitating and not performing properly. So all the new stuffs, the JR3 and our new JR4, we don't even have a Schrader valve provision in the JR4. We put a spring behind the divider piston, and that takes up the place of the gas pressure. But now it's sealed, and the handler does not have to worry about adding or removing pressure. So that's the reason we did that on the quarter midget shocks. So Paul, thanks for tuning in. Kevin, thank you for letting me know everybody can hear me. See if I can. Trying to view the comments is another issue. You can only see like 3 comments at a time with the new Facebook Live. So I apologize. It's going to take me a little bit to get used to this new Facebook Live. If you asked a question, I did not see it, type it again. I apologize. Copy and paste it. Hopefully I'm seeing the most recent ones, and then I can answer your questions, because before I could scroll through all of them, and now I cannot. While we're waiting for a few questions, also if you have a topic that you want covered, even if you don't want to comment it here, shoot me a message. We definitely want to talk about things that interest you and that you can benefit from. It's a little easier when we're racing every week, because I get a lot of questions at the track, and I just make a note in my phone, okay, we need to do a Monday morning quarterback about that, because typically if one person has a question about it, several do. So looks like there's going to be some racing here, not this weekend, but next weekend, hopefully. So looking forward to that if they allow us to go. I know there's going to be some restrictions as far as how many people can go, but if they allow the manufacturers to go and support the race, we'll certainly be there. We look forward to seeing all you guys. We miss y'all. So let's see. I'm trying to see if it'll let me, if there's something I'm missing here. Let me do this. I will look on my personal page to see if I can. No, doesn't let me see them there either. All right. If I missed your question, I will definitely go back and answer. Up to this week, they've let me select to use the old Facebook Live, and I've kept doing that. And this week, they're forcing you to use the new one, and I'm not a fan. I'm going to call Zuckerberg and tell him he needs to, if he's going to roll something new out, he needs to do as good a job as Kevin Crum does to make sure there's no issues. Aaron, I use the term pressure balance in my shock seminar. And so what that means is the shock is balanced properly so it won't cavitate with a given gas pressure. So when we're building this base valve stack, based on the stack on our main piston, we need to build this to a certain amount of force, to exert a certain amount of force. So if our main stack's going to give us 150 pounds at 10 inches per second, the base valve will need to be built to handle that load. If it's too soft, the shock will cavitate, and even if it's too stiff, it can cavitate. So there's the calculation is usually 11 to 13% is what this needs to be. There's shocks that have been built, and I've used them in the past, that actually have a pressure tap on both sides of the piston, and then you can make sure the shock has an even pressure across there, because that's what you're trying to do as the piston goes up and down, is have an even pressure, because when there is a pressure imbalance and the pressure drops on one side of that piston, that's when you see the cavitation. So that's what I meant by that. And you can actually tune with a pressure tap in the shock and make sure that it's pressure balanced correctly. But that's something your shock builder should be doing, not anything the end user needs to worry about. That was a good question, Aaron. Thank you. Speaking of the shock seminar, it is on our YouTube page. So it's a couple hours long. I did a free shock seminar a few weeks ago when this whole mess started. I definitely encourage you to go watch that. So there's a lot of good feedback there. Watch that, and if you have any questions after that, I'd be more than happy to answer. But there's a lot of good stuff in there. And while you're there, subscribe to our YouTube page. So we put all these Facebook videos there for the folks that maybe aren't Facebookers. They can go back and watch on our YouTube page. I try to post those and keep them pretty accurate. I think this is 87. I think up to 85 is on there, so it's pretty accurate. So no other questions. We will tune off for tonight. It's been a long day. I didn't get to go home for dinner or anything. Certainly can afford to miss a meal, but I was here for that city council meeting. So we got approved to build our new building, and now we just need to kind of weigh our options here and see how things are gonna lay out with the economy and whatnot, and whether we bite off that big project. But we were pretty close before all this hit. We were going. We just have to figure out a couple things in the meantime here. So we hope you and your family are staying safe, and hope to get to see you at a racetrack here soon. Rick Remore, am I still thinking about doing a quarter midget seminar? I am, but I'm probably going to do it once this pandemic is lifted, because as I tried to work through the logistics of it, there was no way for me to set up a one stationary camera and walk around the car and do everything I needed to do and show you how to scale the car and what I do with the tires and etc. So I'm going to, our video guy who does a lot of our videos, he is going to film that for me. So we're going to film it and probably release it in multi-part segments, and maybe even some of them would be Monday morning quarterback. So we're going to do everything from scaling the car, setting the car up, tires, all that good stuff. So yeah, there's a bunch of good quarter midget content coming. I just realized I couldn't do it with one stationary camera, and I don't really have a producer here who can go camera to camera, but our video guy is going to film that and piece it together. So yeah, for sure. Dave, thanks for tuning in. Yeah, appreciate the congrats on the building. That has been a couple month long project getting to that point, and we're certainly excited to build that at some point here in the future. So all right, guys, thank you all for tuning in. We hope you have a fantastic rest of your week, and we will see you soon.